The scripture this morning comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verses 38 through 42. Now, as they went on their way, he entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks, so she came to him and asked, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her."
Sometimes we feel like the world has shifted on us. Sometimes we feel like the world has changed dramatically. Other times we feel like we've changed and we wonder when the world's going to catch up. Then again, there are times when we feel like we have not just seen change, but entered an alternate universe. We have found ourselves in the Twilight Zone, and we wonder how in the world we got here. Sometimes it happens with a massive technological breakthrough that just rattles our mind. Sometimes it's when hate speech flows on a national stage and no one challenges it. Sometimes it's when the person we love shares a secret that shakes our world. Sometimes it's a memory from the past that wiggles its way out of our subconscious and changes the present. Sometimes it's a good thing, like when a church welcomes people with no strings attached and everybody goes, "Wow!" Sometimes it's when someone apologizes when you've said nothing to them. We go, "Whoa, that happened." Or when we see the scales of justice suddenly balance in a way we didn't think we would ever see. This past December, Marvel released the latest Spider-Man movie and introduced the concept of the multiverse. The multiverse assumes there are multiple realities going on simultaneously, an infinite number of realities all around us at any moment. Parallel universes, and they can be real. One could even break into the other and cause conflict and a great plot. Pretending they don't exist doesn't mean they're not there. Ignoring them won't make the other reality go away. It's there whether we like it or not. Whining about them, while a good step forward, doesn't really fix this clash of realities either. And I think we see this lived out almost as if this multiverse is a parable of the worlds we live in. The colliding of realities can be seen on the news and social media. These conflicting realities can be seen in polls and statistics, especially involving marginalized people. The idea of two Americas is really an old idea. There's 4 or 5. Sometimes it's easier to see how these realities clash in a more intimate, personal example. We bring it down to individual realities, and sometimes we can grasp this big concept in a more intimate way, like today's scripture. 2 worlds conflicting with each other in plain view. Sisters. Oh, that's always the beginning of a good drama, right? Mary and Martha, a confrontation of the busy worker and the spiritual seeker. The task manager and the attentive listener. The concrete sequential and the empath. Ooh, those 2 never get along, right? Sisters sharing a home, a family, and a common story. Sisters who both see Jesus, but in completely different ways. One wanted to host him. The other wants to learn from him. Both were sincere. Both were authentic. And Jesus has absolutely nothing to say about the conflict until one complains. You see, it's fine to have different realities until one of us decides our reality needs to be the total reality, until the multiverse cannot exist outside of our permission and our experience, until Martha complained, until Martha articulates her assumption that her way is the way. Jesus had nothing to say about any of it till Martha asked Jesus to impose her reality on Mary. Martha doesn't ask Mary to come help. She doesn't deal with things direct. No. She asked Jesus to back her agenda and then impose it on Mary. She asked Jesus to impose judgment rather than talking to her sister. She asked Jesus to pass a law that protects the way Martha sees the world. She asked Jesus to redraw the voting districts of the sisterhood. Heaven forbid they actually talk about their differences. Heaven forbid they actually bring their realities face to face to resolve it, because God knows this isn't the first conflict between these sisters, right? There's no way this spills over into public view with Jesus present if this is the first time Martha's ever been disappointed in Mary. It's not the first time Mary's ever felt conflict with her sister. For all our cries of unity, for all our talk of overcoming differences, our world seems determined to stay stuck. We want others to be held accountable. We want others to be called out. We want others to be brought to justice, whatever we mean by that. And meanwhile, true justice is waiting on us to stop deflecting, stop blaming, stop propping up our own reality as normative, our own stuff. Our own stuff. Clearly, Mary and Martha each had their own stuff. They'd had it for a while, and so do we. So what does it look like to stop deflecting, stop blaming, to stop propping up our own stuff as the norm for others? What does it look like? 20 years ago, my dad sat next to me in a U-Haul helping me move one more time. This time, he was about to be a grandfather. We're moving into a new apartment that would have a second bedroom for a baby and guests. Out of nowhere, at a stop sign, my dad says to me, "You know, there's been times in your life when I've been a real SOB. You got a lot more than you deserved. I'm really sorry. I'm going to be a much better grandfather." I sat at that stop sign for a long time. It took a while for my foot to find the gas, for my brain to find the moment again. Reality had shifted on me. While it didn't eliminate all the tensions, we started healing. We started talking, we started sharing, we started seeing each other differently. A much longer story explains how my dad came to this point in time, but needless to say, it had a lot to do with things we've been talking about through Lent. Relationships, respect for those who are different. But my dad took the next step, taking responsibility. Not just naming what had happened in the past, but naming his new responsibility going forward. Not just, I did things wrong, but here's my responsibility that I'm going to live out of as I move forward. What does this not blaming, not deflecting, not living in our own reality look like? She doesn't know this story's coming, so I will apologize in advance. But 4 years ago, a woman walked into my office. She was looking for a new church, a place where God's love was practiced without any of the petty judgment she had seen and felt and experienced other places. After talking a while and hearing about their church background, which was significantly different than who we are as a faith tradition, I asked, "You understand we're open and affirming, right? We welcome all people. We welcome the entire LGBTQ plus community. We don't just welcome them, we affirm them and assure them they are loved by God." And this woman looked at me with all the sincerity in the world and said, "How?" Now, it wasn't an argument. It was a deep curiosity. It was not a pushback. It was as if a blind spot in their unconditional love for others had been exposed. They sincerely wanted to know how. How can I let go of this reality I've known and live in this more loving reality? How do you do such a thing? We talked for about another hour, and I heard some of the most beautiful honesty and personal testimony I've ever heard. She shared more of it again at El Dorado the other day with the residents there. This woman showed up for work the next Sunday and about every Sunday since, and Susan Noss has become one of my heroes, guiding couples of all kinds with wisdom and kindness, welcoming people of all kinds with an authentic love, helping people that others might even be intimidated to talk to, people you wouldn't assume that little church lady was ever going to be friends with. Yet they have her cell number, and she prays with them. When confronted with a different reality, Susan did not reject it. She said, "Show me. Show me how others see the world, how others experience God." And both Susan and the church have grown in ways we could not imagine because of the blessing of her willingness to confront a different reality. I'm sure if you asked Susan, she could tell you a longer version of this story. I'm sure you would hear a lot about relationships, growing respect. But at some point, Susan owned her responsibility to love all God's people. It was a commitment she had made, and when there was a challenge to that reality, she took on the responsibility of educating herself, the responsibility of growing in love, so she could continue her responsibility of loving all God's people. Whether we are talking about lovers who are estranged, siblings who are entrenched, or nations who are engaged in war. The path forward through the lens of restorative justice requires relationship, respect, and then responsibility. We have to sit with others, making ourselves open to each other's presence, to hear each other's voice. We have to see the humanity in each other, reminding ourselves that our futures are intertwined. That's relationship and respect. But then we have to go to that next level. We have to own our own biases and our passions, own our limitations and our gifts, own our privilege and our potential. We have to be able to articulate who we are, to take responsibility for all that is us and all that's been handed to us. Our image today from Ezekiel Gonzalez, My Upside Down World, has been sitting with me as I prepared for this morning. I don't know how well you can see it in the sanctuary. As we put it online, you can notice that all the people are looking at each other. Whatever else is going on, whatever surreal, adaptive reality is in that image, the people are looking towards each other. The world may seem upside down. They may all see the world differently, but they're still facing each other. You might notice that things in the picture seem to be surreal. Buildings seem out of place, a strange blurring of finished and unfinished structures, a thin line between rural and urban, yet they still face each other. And just by creating this piece of art, we are confronted with Ezekiel's reality. We're invited into another person's view of the world to imagine what they mean by this distorted perspective. We're challenged to see beyond our own expectations, and we're called to affirm the authenticity of another's reality. Their hopes, fears, hurts, their sense of purpose, even if it doesn't make sense to us. It's there and it invites us in with a curiosity that sometimes art can do when reality is too close. This is the power of restorative justice. We have to name our responsibilities, the people we care for, the institutions we embody and serve, the hurts we cause or benefit from, the values we embrace and fight for. We have to be able to look at what our reality is and put it out there, just like Ezekiel has. This is what it feels like to be in the world for me. This is my reality. It seems upside down, but this is real. Here I am. We have to be able to do that, to be a part of a restorative justice process. And we have to hear others do the same. We have to respect their responsibilities, even if we think they're bizarre. We have to respect their responsibilities, even if we think they're misguided. We have to hear others' truth and respect it as their truth, even if it's not our truth. Then we can start digging deeper. Then we can start to find new paths. I want to take you back to our scripture story and imagine it went differently. Imagine that Mary and Martha had a friend who had talked to them about restorative justice. Imagine they had a really good counselor that they'd gone to, and they'd been building some tools for interpersonal conflict to help them get over these sisterhood issues. Imagine if Martha had politely said, "Mary, could you come help me?" And imagine Mary responding, "No, you're the one that invited Jesus. Now he's here. Why don't you just stop and listen? This was your idea." Imagine Martha saying, "But hosting is a huge responsibility. And we have a home now full of people who are watching us as women. And there's enough tension on what's expected of women in our world already without me doing it alone. Would you please help me? The overwhelming weight of expectation is crushing me, Mary." And imagine Mary's response. "None of those expectations matter. It's Jesus. Have you been listening? He doesn't care about the expectations. He's telling us to quit worrying about that. Just sit and listen. You'll be amazed." Imagine if Martha said, I can't just stop caring for guests. It's who I am. It's what I do." Imagine Mary saying, "I can't just leave our guests and miss the opportunity to learn from Jesus. I can't just leave the people I'm sitting with to jump in with you." Imagine Martha says, "Well, if that's where you have to be, take good notes for me, because I can't be there. I can't stop and be present." And imagine Mary says, "Thank you, Martha, for the ways you always empower our family." Imagine if their different responsibilities could step away from their personalities, step away from the hurts of the past. If just their responsibilities, what was at stake for them, their identities, who they were, could stop and have a conversation with each other without all the baggage, without all the blame, without all the mistrust, without all the wounds. If just the responsibilities that each carried could talk to each other and find a way forward together. Imagine if various responsibilities had a voice and could speak to each other. Take the assumptions out of it, the judgment out of it, take the need to be right out of it. Oh, good Lord. And let our responsibilities have a conversation. Imagine how many problems we could solve. Imagine how many hurts we could heal. God does. God has imagined this from creation's dawning. And God still hopes for such reconciliation, such resurrection of relationship and community. And that's in some ways at the core of why God sends Jesus into the world, so that Jesus' reality could confront ours. So Jesus' reality could show us God's vision for creation and confront our reality, so that we didn't have a choice to change, to let go of our assumptions, to let go of the way we've needed it to be, and accept a reality that's without blame. It doesn't include us hiding our heads in the sand. We just have to listen to the reality of others, proclaim the reality of Jesus' love, share the reality of God's grace, and allow the conversation to change our reality.